Hey, what is going on YouTube? Aaron here. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're in the Cherbourg, the French Tier 7 Super Heavy Cruiser. The French Super Heavies, along with the German Renaissance or Alternative Destroyer line, are two of the newest lines to come to early access in this update for World of Warships Legends. And guys, without potentially a little bit of hyperbole, this might be the worst line in the game. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Oh no, how could you say that? Well, let me explain a few things first. We'll go over the ship and, of course, stats, commander guide, and all of that, armor viewer at the end. But guys, after playing this ship a few times, it doesn't necessarily do the job that a cruiser needs to do. Now, that being said, I have some pretty decent stats in this ship, and it does have some other attributes when you put them in the right position that can make this ship an absolute monster. But this ship has a 26 second reload with 305 millimeter guns. On top of that, the accuracy is rather lackluster. So you combine all of those things, even with the decent armor, the good speed, and that salvo, for example, is not worth a 25 second reload. A broadside New Orleans at 12 kilometers, and we got 2 overpins for a total of 1,800 damage. Now, that being said, this game is a good example of what these ships are fully capable of when potentially put in the right set of circumstances. You can see our engine boost coupled with our concealment. We are able to get out here on the flank, and that is where these ships are going to excel. The problem with that, though, and I always love when people give me these arguments like, oh, it's a great flanker. Well, what happens when you can't flank? And in this game, we were able to, and here's another, I guess, a good example of what the shells can do. We got a nice citadel there, but still, I don't think that the reload warrants getting one citadel every 25 seconds for 9,000 damage. So again, if you can get the RNG to go your way, you can get a New Orleans to sail broadside to you, then yes, this will be a fantastic ship. However, we get more salvos like that. We did connect more shells, so a little bit better RNG, but just not enough to warrant taking up a cruiser slot, in my opinion. With all of that being said, as we actually do connect another citadel on that broadside New Orleans. So if you can get, like we said, New Orleans to sail broadside to you, this ship will be amazing. However, most people in this game do operate with some, capacity to not allow their ship to sink in, 2 minutes and 40 seconds there. So when going against those people, you will have a little bit more difficult time. However, sometimes that is the allure or the new or the fun factor of this game. So if you are looking to try out these ships, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about their strengths. As we did get a decent hit on that hipper. It was about 10K to a slightly angled hipper. So the guns, when they do connect, are not the worst things in the world. We actually do have a pretty good drive-by salvo on a Veneto. I will try and edit that in somewhere in this, or maybe make it a YouTube short. But the strengths of the French Super Heavies are their armor. To a certain extent, you do have a very weak bow and stern. So if you can manage to angle like we kind of are here, you will actually bounce, as we just did, a majority of most battleship even calibers. So angling is very important. You couple that with the engine boost, the very fast speed you can get up to, and your concealment. You can see that, well, our ring is going now, but we have a 10.3 concealment in a cruiser with very strong guns. And decent HE, you actually just saw that we knocked out the engine of the hipper there, but these ships are definitely more AP focused. You combine those attributes with a reload booster and some high caliber French guns, and every now and then, when the dice roll your way, you can get some pretty decent hits. However, I think it requires you getting in close, as we mentioned, and sometimes, as we know in Legends, the cards will not always fall in your favor. In this game, we had a fairly aggressive team and a potential paid actor in that New Orleans, and we were able to do what these cruisers excel at. You put these ships in situations where they are potentially not the best, and yeah, you have a pretty rough game. I think a lot of that can be said for most ships in Legends, but I do believe that most other cruisers at Tier 7 have a much better, adaptability factor. But alas, sometimes that is the nature of playing the game, putting ships in unfavorable positions, or just trying new ships overall. I was excited to try these. You guys saw the first game on stream. It didn't go according to plan, but we actually have like a 90% win rate. Now, of course, that's only like 11 games, so judge that how you will. But the more important stat, and I kind of go over it at the end of the video, is attracted damage. We have around 850,000 attracted damage in this ship. And what that means for those that don't know is that we attract near the battleship amount of damage per game. Attracted damage is the max value of every single shell fired at you. So sometimes it's a little bit misleading because we, of course, know RNG is a factor and not all shells would have been citadels or all torpedoes would have connected. But it's just a measure of, the amount of damage you're taking. But as a general rule of thumb for heavy cruisers and definitely battleships, you want a higher attracted damage. Number one, that means you are putting the ship in the right position or attracting that damage, taking it away from your smaller teammates. Number two, it means you are angling your armor correctly, because if that shell comes in and that number is counted, but the shell, for example, if you are angling your armor and bounces, or, overpens or what have you, instead of, doing that citadel damage, then that number of attracted damage is, of course, going to be a lot higher. So a often underlooked at statistic, which has recently found its way into our stats page, I wish it was displayed at the end battle screen. So sometimes when those battleship mains who are just sitting in the back doing absolutely nothing, they can kind of understand, oh, this is the reason I made, I lost 20,000 credits. And I think the same could be said for destroyers and spotting damage and spots, but alas, we rant on. I had a pretty good rant last night on stream. You probably should check that one out. But here, let's go and get back to this game and the French Super Heavies. We're just kind of pushing through to the middle here. Our team has done a fantastic job of cap control. You can see we already have the Alpha and Charlie cap, and I'm going to go ahead and make my way into the Bravo cap. By angling and not really getting shot at in this opening engagement, I have a lot of health to play with, and that is when we see this broadside Kudasov here, and I'm not going to lie, we get pretty massively trolled the rest of this game. As you can see with that dispersion, it was pretty bad. Maybe a little behind on the lead, but 2 pens there and 1 bounce. Not terrible, but definitely not great. The Kudasov smokes up. We try and hold our lead. And the one thing about blind firing you have to realize is you do lose target lock, which is going to, number one, make your dispersion worse. But target lock also gives you a little bit of that. I think it jumps the cursor ahead a little bit, which is why I really wish we had the circle on the map, such as they do on PC. But again, a boy can dream of things that would help the general player base and overall gameplay, I guess. But here we're kind of working our way into the middle. In these situations, if we didn't have potentially such a strong lead with as many ships as we do, you don't want to over-pursue as Aaron kills all the village folk there. I murdered the people in that castle. It showed no island symbol, and the shot wouldn't have mattered anyway. Our team got that Atlanta, but I hate when the island symbol indicates that your shells would hit the island, and it wasn't up until we fired. So, yeah, the townsfolk were not happy. And here is another situation of a paid actor. But if you'll notice, our concealment actually allowed us to get pretty close to this Nagato to kind of go in and brawl him. You don't have the absolute best secondaries, and you don't have torpedoes. But, again, you couple that with a little bit of angling, and here you can kind of see we're stopping. I wanted to get this cap. I said in the moment, I'm just like, yeah, forget the cap. But I was like, no, let's go ahead and get the cap. Let's play the right way. Let's get the XP. Unbeknownst to me that this Nagato was not concerned with me at all. Now, he did have 3 ships on his flank, so how concerned with me can he be? He probably has played this ship once and realized that I am not a huge threat. However, we do get along his broadside here, and when you can get in close, and if you know how to angle, I think you can have a lot of fun in these situations. Honestly, brawling, and of course torpedoes are going to make a difference, but brawling in these types of situations is really fun to me. Here's a good example of our speed, though. We actually use our speed to dodge this carrier and get a pretty nasty hit on the mid-belt of that Nagato. Unless you know that the ship, like the one we shot at earlier, the Veneto, has a very weak citadel belt, I would honestly just aim for upper belt. You do have a good portion or a good amount of pen with these guns, but it is not enough to really be trying that on some larger armor belts such as the Nagato or Amagi or other ships with good armor belts. But a weak broadside like the Veneto or some other cruisers, especially medium to heavy cruisers, I would absolutely try and aim waterline. Now, the next situation that we actually get in this boat is actually technically a losing play. We have all of the caps, and chasing these ships is not the best play, and I hate when I see players do it, especially in a game that is not as potentially dominant as this one, meaning we have all the caps and we have a 4-on-2 ship advantage. But here we are chasing these ships, and of course a Saipan can't kite or defend itself, but we're putting ourselves in harm's way instead of letting these ships come to us, and that is sometimes what a lot of players don't understand. They go out chasing and they complain about the HE spam. It's like, well, you're putting yourself in that spot, but here this Kudasov is doing a half-decent job. However, we knew that he was one to play with a throttle, and we actually catch him in this salvo, and I had a pretty salty moment on stream right through the center of his boat, 2 overpens, 1 pen. Less than a 50% hit rate at around 10 kilometers, and this is just where the ships are truly frustrating. So as we said at the beginning, and we will reiterate it again for those who just, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I'm preparing myself for the comments already. If RNG rolls your way, you will shine in this boat. If you don't, however, you will be having very frustrating games and probably a lot of losses. This final engagement here, though, is a good epitome or example of kind of the overall attitude of this boat. A decent boat with fast speed, decent maneuverability, good armor, and just trolley guns. We've taken 3 or 4 salvos at this Kudasov now and still yet to get the kill. Now, of course, he is abusing the physics of the border, and we're kind of waiting for our teammates. I'm not exactly sure what they were doing. You can kind of see them on the mini-map there. They were pretty close to him, but we've only seen 1 or 2 salvos go their way. As we get our turret knocked by the 152s of the Kudasov. That's right, we have also gotten a turret destroyed and knocked, so yeah, the turrets are still French as well. But again, we're using our maneuverability, we're using our strengths to try and overcome this engagement, and as we said earlier, this is sort of a losing play, chasing 2 kiting ships, but in the grand scheme of it, we just wanted the damage and kills at the end. So make sure that if you do decide to do this, you are not throwing the game, meaning you have the caps and you have a ship advantage. As a good rule of thumb, it is not a great idea to chase kiting ships. But a pretty, ribbon-heavy game. A few defends, a few citadels, 2 solo caps, 3 kills, a few secondary hits, a few planes downed as well, and a good overall example of these ships. And what they can be. I think the Tier 8, the Brest, while it does contain 2 of my favorite things, will be, if you got that reference, as we tick the high caliber and Confederate there. So a good chunk of overall damage to the enemy team. And we've attracted a bit of damage this game, but probably not the best example of it because we lost all of that health at the end of the game. So if you do decide to get focused and go out of your way to get focused, you'll probably go down. But if you can angle and put yourself in the right spots, probably laying low, then you will do a lot better. But as we were saying, I think the Brest is going to be a lot better. It has the 330 millimeter guns, a little bit more health, not much. And I just think the guns are going to be a little bit more accurate. I do think these ships right off the bat need a buff. I don't know who. I know that the super testers do give probably some pretty decent feedback, and I don't know who's listening to it as we get. I said on stream, I said if this battleship takes the kill, I'm uninstalling. So that's what we're doing right here. No, I'm just kidding. But I just thought it was ironic that he didn't shoot the whole time until the last possible moment. However, kills are irrelevant. But yeah, I think that these ships certainly need a buff. I do honestly believe that these are the weakest tech tree line in the game. I might be not thinking of a line in the moment, but a decent overall score with what I consider to be a pretty mediocre tier 7, but 33-51 there with 3 kills, and a lot of that XP, if you guys did not know, is due to the overall impact we had on the game, meaning we got caps, we got kills, we got damage, etc. But let's go ahead and review our commander. I'm just running the basic commander here, Andre Lemon, with the double fire, burn it down, and igniter. I do probably choose beyond range for my other line of French cruisers, of course, fixated there and punch through, as well as fully packed for that added reload booster. And here we're actually running Baltimore and Mimbelli. I definitely want to increase that reload. You could probably choose refill station, and that does give you like an extra 10%, but that's only... it's not that much in the overall scheme of things. Here are our modules: aiming systems mod 1, propulsion mod 2, concealment mod 3, and reload is a must in the 4th slot there. Also to take note, we were running a camo. It is the permanent camouflage. A lot of the permanent camos have been added There is the reload booster, but the camo basically looks like a blank camo, so I might be switching that up. But I don't know. There is a bit of history and historical value that I enjoy with playing the historical camos there. Let's go ahead and review the stats. The survivability, you saw it on screen there, in the game is 49,500. The artillery, 2x4 305mm guns with a 26.7 reload. And just for comparison's sake, I wanted to compare to the John Bart, which has 380mm guns, 22.2 seconds. Now, I believe we may have Brawler or something on that build on the John Bart, but still, that's just terrible. These things need a buff. I'm sorry. I know that, yes, I got a good game, and I'm sure somebody's going to be like, oh, I got a good game once, but these are not going to do well in the average player's hands, and that's what they judge a lot of ships off of. So, yeah. But here's the AA defense. It's average. It's not great. The long-range AA, which is those 130s, is kind of what you're focused on. That does the most damage. The maneuverability is good at 32.9 knots with a pretty tight turning circle and a pretty decent rudder. And the concealment is another strength, as we mentioned in game. 10.3 kilometers there is probably some of the best concealment, besides maybe the Italians at the tier. So a weird, unique overall ship. I used the example on stream of like the girl you call at 2 a.m. She always answers, but she's ugly. So anyway, let's take a look at the armor there. The giant 25mm front plating like we talked about. But as we mentioned in game, if you can angle, you will probably do okay. It has a very strong mid belt there, as most of the French do. A little bit of a smaller citadel with a slight inverted turtle back there. So you are probably pretty protected, which is why I mentioned the brawling aspect. But if you show broadside, you will get absolutely yeeted. You can see it's slightly above the water there, and battleships will probably punch right through that belt. However, that angle, sometimes those turtlebacks they do funny things with shells in close. The Germans, especially that hipper you saw earlier, when those overpens, we hit that hipper, it was probably hitting the turtleback, bouncing up and going through the top half of that casemate there and causing overpens. It's really weird when you study the armor mechanics. But here is the line. It starts with the Toulon or the Toulon. I don't know. I probably said that wrong. And then ends with the breast. Like we mentioned, two of my favorite things there. But as we take a peek at her, the breast looks a lot better. I mean, compared to the Cherbourg there, I think this ship is going to be a lot of fun at tier 8. However, I just think the reload probably needs to be looked at. I think we looked at it here, and it's like 28 seconds. Yeah, so 28 seconds, just not ideal. Again, you'll need to put these ships in the right spot, but some games, as we said about 5 times already in this video, you won't be able to do that in every game. So there's the video. I hope you guys enjoy that. That is the Cherbourg and a brief look at the French heavies. I'm guessing these ships will get a buff eventually. And here are my stats. Like I said, 11 games is definitely not enough to truly judge a ship, and I think my accuracy is because I've been getting in close. But you look at the attracted damage there and the XP and the damage, and it's not terrible. So I could be a little off kilter here, but I just don't see these ships being too strong in the hands of the potatoes, and that is what Wargaming loves to judge the game on. So. But that's the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know what you guys think. Have you got these ships in early access yet? Do you like them? Do you hate them? I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm not fully convinced that these things are the absolute worst in the game, but they definitely have my vote for being the most the ugliest and probably the most unfun to play in the moment. But the beauty is in the eye of the beer holder, as they say. So hope you guys have a great weekend or week, whatever it is when this video drops. Love you guys. Aaron out. Peace.